Okay, so I heard a couple of people just the other day talking about free will and determinism, and they were doing this sort of beardy pulley thing about, are people really free or are people really determined? And the conversation just seemed so futile that I wanted to at least chime in on this discussion just a little bit and problematize the very framing of the debate. It's too abstract. This whole are people free or are they not free? Is everything determined? Is it not determined? I don't even know what people are thinking about when they're talking that way. I think it just feels powerful to use such all-encompassing terms, and that itself is part of what I want to get at, is the terms that we use. I think part of the argument that I would want to give, and please, play this a couple of times, listen carefully to the language that's actually being used. That's what the critical attention to the language, the particular word choices. This is what is so crucial. I think oftentimes we use words that convey meaning without really realizing how those words are doing that, and then we're left mystified by these questions. So let me give you a quick example. Okay, there's a famous story, and I believe this is told by Daniel Dennett, but if there's a famous story about Alice, and Alice is thinking about taking a trip in the upcoming months. Now, she can't decide whether she should take the trip or not take the trip. She starts to think, boy, there's a lot of reasons to go and a lot of reasons to not go. And she starts to make a big list of all the reasons to go and then make a list of all the reasons to not go. And then she talks to her friends and says to them, well, here's the reasons. I could go for this reason or I could not go for that reason. Now, at the end of the month, she's either going to go or not going to go. Now, someone, especially a determinist, at least people who claim to be determinists, they sometimes might say, well, isn't it, if she's either going to go or not going to go, isn't it futile for her to go through all of this deliberation? That is, if she's going to just deliberate and ask her friends and make the lists, but ultimately she's either just going to go or not going to go, why go through all the deliberation? Why not just go or not go? Well, the problem with that is if you say, isn't it futile to go through the deliberation, you're still stuck with the fact that the deliberation itself was determined. The problem is the word futile. When you use a word like futile, you're smuggling in a sense of freedom. Language itself forces us to experience freedom. Whether we are free or not, you don't have to haggle about whether or not you're just a thing in motion being determined. The point is that you can't help but experience yourself as free because the language that we have at least has, if not some superordinary metaphysical given from God free will in the superlative sense, it at least has some sense of agency, autonomy, decision-making, choice. We make promises. We have senses of possibilities and of things that could be or if could not be. The more that you start to look at our language and the way that we use words like decision and choice, those are much more important to me. Don't sit and do the beardy pulley and ask, are we free or not? Ask, how is decision making capacitated or inhibited? To what extent do we exercise our agency through literacy? How was literacy and money part of the functional anonymity which made all kinds of individual agency and collective agency possible? Try to look at the means and modes of communication by which what we call agency, autonomy, choice, decision, these kinds of capacities, they're not this ultimate free will stuff. I don't even know what that is about. If it's all hinging upon some metaphysical freedom of are we absolutely free, I think that's a sort of super fantastical boogeyman that's used by the critics to go, well, that can't be the case. Well, the same could be said of the deterministic position, some sort of radical determinism. Even if it's all materiality and there isn't anything that isn't immaterial, materiality is very complex. Take magnets as example. Magnetic fields are not, properly speaking, things. Now, there is a kind of materiality to a magnet, but to start to talk about the materiality of a magnetic field is you're stretching a metaphor rather than shedding light on an issue. I think the same could be said of language. Language is more like a very complex magnetic resonance field. It's not simply reducible to the materiality that makes it possible. And humans, whether they're free or not in some ultimate sense, they at the very least experience choice, they experience decision, and to that extent, they experience themselves as free.